Okay. That's my new introduction since I get made fun of for my hey.
I feel like it's a little derivative.
Derivative of what?
The one you used to do.
Oh. Well, I'm a simple man. I just have to switch my vowels around or something.
All right. I mean, you could try any word you like 3 times.
Chad, sweet. We are talking about sugar today.
Yeah.
And so what is the main issue when it comes to sugar? Is it because we have so many advertisements out there telling us that this is good for us, that this is something that we need to have, that if we don't have sugar in our system, we're going to just bonk out? If we're out there running long and strong and we run out of sugar, we're just going to fall over and we're not going to be able to finish the run. What do you think is the reason for all this sugar in our systems?
Sugar. I think that's part of it. I think advertising plays a huge role, especially when it comes to performance in athletes and runners. A huge role in how much sugar we take in. I think sort of bigger than that on a macro sense, sugar is such a huge part of everybody's daily diet. And that's whether you're taking it in or trying to fend it off. It really is pervasive in almost every food that we take in.
Yeah, I like that. I think we should call this episode The Sweet on Sugar.
The Sweet on Sugar.
Yeah, because you are Chad Sweet, and we're talking about sugar. You see that?
Can we keep this short and sweet like me?
Oh, there's another one. This stuff just rolls off our tongues.
I know.
We don't even have to try. So I do want to address something that I think a lot of people can relate to, and that is that we take in a lot more sugar than we used to.
Yeah, that's for darn sure.
And we did a little bit of research here. And Chad, you looked this up, but 200 years ago,
we were looking at about 2 pounds of sugar intake per person per year. 2 pounds a year.
So it's Christmas and you get an orange.
Right.
Right. And that, there's, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, we definitely had less sugar in our diets, right? And now, as a whole, we're getting in, I think, a lot more sugar than we even realize.
Yeah.
So, and I know we've been dealing with this a little bit with our own as fathers, just bringing this equation into what is maybe a good balance with our loved ones, and and also understanding that we don't want to completely restrict these these treats,
right?
And see it
a lot of it's not even treats though, too. A lot of it's just like normal, what you would think is like normal food, like soup and ketchup, and these things that you think, well, it's just ketchup. You're just putting it on your your whatever you're going to eat, for that meal, your hamburger or something like that. But that's added sugar. It's not naturally occurring. And by the way, to finish that statistic, 200 years ago, Americans only ate about 2 pounds of sugar per year. Currently, we approximately eat 3 pounds of sugar per week. Per week. Yeah.
And that's the average person. So, and that study, we can link that into the show notes. Chad, where's that from again?
That's from the New Hampshire, their Institute of Health, their Department of Health.
Yeah. Okay, so we're not just making this up, but I actually have been talking a lot lately with my own daughter about just how treats are a part of our lives and how we want to look forward to having treats, but why do we need to stay away from so much sugar, right? And putting this into simple terms, I was telling you, we walk the canyons behind our house every day. I get home at about 5:30, and we have about a half an hour of daylight left, and we walk the canyons with our dogs, and we talk about our day, and she always ends up challenging me to a race. Mm-hmm. And she's fast, actually. So she may be 9 years old, but she can legitimately beat me, but she knows that it's got to be very short distance.
Yeah.
And she'll point to that fence that's about 40 yards away, or that rock, and go. And then she always beats me to the line. She's fast. And I try to tell her then, during times like that, hey, what's cool is you have so much abundance of good energy, and you're getting so strong, and you're developing into the best version of yourself with good nutrition, because we make good choices. And every once in a while, I like to just bring up those kind of times when she's using performance, and then we can talk about why it's important that she makes good choices. And I think that that's a fine line in and of itself. Like, we don't want to have so many restrictions that we feel like we don't have any fun, and that
why are we living?
Right. So, but, that being said, I think that most of us are, we think about exercising as a way to sort of burn off the sugar or something.
Right. Or allow I exercised today, or I ran 5 miles so I can have half a pint of ice cream tonight. Right. And the way I try to think of it is that what we decide to consume and put into our bodies, that's good energy in, or it can be good energy in. And I want that to help my performance, right? I want that to contribute to better performances. But also, I just want to feel better. Right.
And let's face it, sugar is, I think, America's biggest addiction, right? And it is acidic for our bodies. It is something that we can tolerate to a certain extent, but we're not really meant to get in an abundance of sugar like we do. And I want to be clear about something like fruit, though. Okay.
Yeah.
I just, it's something that really sticks in my side when I hear about how bananas are bad for you or something, right? I mean, I will hear this from people that are, let's say every night they're having wine, or they're having some alcohol of some sort, and then they're saying that bananas, oh, you eat bananas? That's terrible. That's so much sugar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm sorry, but a lot of people, you got it turned around, man. I mean, if you're saying that food from the earth is not good for you, we're just not on the same page. In my mind, your body is going to adjust, and it's going to contribute intuitively to its energy needs, and tell you what kind of whole foods that it really needs. Yeah. And so I think of it this way, very simply, is that if we were to take something like oranges, and you were to eat an orange, or maybe even two, you're going to feel pretty satisfied from having that orange or two. And if you're craving it, of course, you probably need it. And then you look at now smoothies, or you look at things that we take the fiber out of the orange.
Just the orange juice.
Orange juice.
Yep.
And you can easily drink a glass of orange juice, which would be maybe the equivalent of 6 oranges without all the fiber. And you're now doing something you wouldn't normally do. You wouldn't probably eat 6 oranges in a single sitting, but you'll drink 6 oranges.
Yeah.
So that's where I think the bad rap can come from, if we're eating whole foods.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Once you divorce the sugar that's naturally found in that food from its other natural components, like fiber, like if there's protein in it maybe, or good fat or something like that. Once you divorce that from the sugar, now you've created this processed food that, sugar is kind of like a drug. It really does play on the brain as an addictive compound.
That's right. And look, we're not RDAs, we're not dietitians. This is just our opinions, and want to make sure that I point that out, that if I have an opinion on something, it's because through time and experience, and I've definitely done a lot of I've tried to educate myself as much as possible on these topics, but there are some gray areas, and certainly we could be missing some of those areas with certain people with certain endocrinology issues and things like that. We're not talking about those extremes. We're just talking in general. I think that nutrition doesn't have to be that complicated. And, I'm just, as a coach, and of course, building a reputation as a strength and conditioning coach over 20 years, this will be the common scenario. I'll go to, a gathering or something, a picnic or a party or something like that, and I'll always have people say, "Oh, what do you do?" or that maybe they know of me, and then they say, so I just need to get rid of this, right? And it's just an area around their waistline that they want to get rid of, right? And there's no such thing as spot reduction. You can't decide that you're just going to do some sit-ups, and you're going to do something that creates a burn in your abs, and then you're going to magically get rid of body fat that way, right? It always comes down to the same type of conversation, which is, I'm on this new diet. And in the diet, it's just simply giving you rules all of a sudden, right? Yeah. So I'm allowed to have these things and then nothing else, right? And of course, this scenario plays out that in a few months, they're off the diet, because as a general definition, to me, if you say diet to me, it's not going to work. Right? I'm on a plan, right, that involves whole real foods and good choices and consistency that I can do year after year after year. That is what is going to work. Mm-hmm. If you can't see yourself doing it in a year from now, or 10 years from now even, then is it something that really you should even start, right? I think that when it comes to the conversation around sugar, especially though, we're really looking at like some sort of magic bullet, or some sort of area that we don't really want to have the truth. We don't want to hear the truth about it. In other words, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear more than what you want to hear. And that's where eyes glaze over on me when I start to say, well, let's look at what you've been doing over the last few days, few weeks, few months, right? And I eat pretty well, right? Okay, let's actually track that for a few days. And I'm not, by the way, I don't count my calories. I don't feel like I need to. And that's not because I have really good genetics. It's not. The majority of the people in my family are actually overweight. It is because of choices, right, that we all can make. And it does come down to calories in versus calories out. I'm sorry, but there's no real secret to that. Some of us, we don't have as much satiety as others. In other words, some people don't have as much of a trigger to say, okay, I've had enough, and they want to keep eating more. That's a very small percentage of people that have that type of real issue. In other words, like I've heard of things like the fat gene, and these type of contributions. Every single time I talk to people, it's really about, are you really aware of the choices that you've made and what they've done over time? And are you willing to change those things? Are you willing to put together a sensible plan for yourself and accept the fact that over time, you will lose weight incrementally by sticking with a good plan, but it's, the 30-day fat loss and all these kind of things that I think really are a disservice to people. But that's what people want to hear,
right?
Not what they need to hear.
Right. I mean, the simple way to say it is eat less, move more.
Yeah. Yeah. And why are we talking about this so much? Because with runners, I was telling you, Chad, that as a coach, when I was working with high school kids and I was a cross country and track coach, I would hear from parents that their kids needed to have that sugary electrolyte drink.
We won't name which one it is.
Right. Or are they, and that now that's part of the thing too, is like there's so many options out there, right?
Yeah,
and we won't even get into all the stimulants that they put into these quote unquote sports drinks. They're not sports drinks. They're not for they're not made for better performance. They're made for money and to sell you more of it and to get you addicted to it and all of that stuff. I literally had parents saying that their kid was going to pass out if they didn't have this sports drink with them, and they need to be allowed to have this drink. Otherwise, they're going to be dehydrated, right? And this is just silly. It's just nonsense. And when we're out there running hard and we might need about, say, 60 grams of sugar in an hour running hard, and we might have those kind of sessions where we do need to replace that sugar, that, again, is something that I believe banana and some water, for the most part, is going to be a great substitute for some sports drink that we don't really need. But that being said, we do have some needs as athletes to get in more sugar. And when we desire that sugar, that's when I would go to more fruit, right? And I would replace those needs with my gut telling me when I've had enough. And when I'm hungry or when I need something sweeter or when I need something saltier, I have it. I don't restrict myself of those things. I'm certainly not saying not to have those things. But what I'm saying is that when we drink something really sugary too, before we know it, we've consumed too much. We haven't even had time to register that yet. Right. So it's so easy to overconsume these sugary products, and we don't really need to vilify, things like fruits and think that that's what's bad for us. Right. But then we're still having all of these other boxed foods that have sugar built into them. We're not even realizing it. Like, I'm having a protein bar, and the protein bar has more grams of sugar than protein, and certainly more grams of sugar than fiber.
Yeah, to make it palatable. And that's not even to talk about all the other chemicals and whatever that they put into these things that are labeled as sports or recovery or healthy bars or drinks or whatever, because they pour a lot of junk in there.
Right. Yeah. And I'll take a gel with me, for example, when I'm out on a long run. And most of the time I take it in case I feel like I need it. And especially if I'm going out and running for a couple hours, then I might have something like that, about an hour into the run.
Or maybe some pickle juice.
And maybe
Bill was talking about that.
I get home and I drink from the pickle jar. And that's that for me, though. That is something, again, that I know that I need to replace some of the sodium. I can feel it. And I do, in that case, have some extra sodium. And it's something that I think will help with my recovery and will help with my performance and my consistency. But, having all of these things around us so accessible all the time, kind of getting back to what we were talking about before, of course, 100 years ago, we didn't have accessibility to these things. And somehow we survived, traveled great distances, were able to perform very well. Now, of course, there are other factors that we have to consider, but just sticking with that idea that we are able to perform our best when we're really more intuitive with what we need. And I think we lose a lot of that intuitiveness when we're constantly taking or eating from wrappers and boxes and not really stopping to read those labels and to see what's really in them. And as a general rule, just whole, real, fresh foods. I don't think that it's easy to overconsume those type of things, right? And fiber is a big reason for that. So, this is something that I just keep talking to people about over and over. And this type of podcast, I know you may, as an athlete listening, you may realize that you should get in a little bit more of these whole real foods. You may think that some of the products that you're using are good, but if you read the label, you might realize that it's got a lot of additives in there or proprietary blends, and you don't really know what's in there, etc. But I'd like to just talk to you, Chad, about what it is that you see when it comes to even your own life, the main problems you see in overconsumption of these readily available foods that aren't really food.
Yeah. Advertisers and corporations have made it so easy for us to not choose the right thing. They talk about things like food deserts in our urban settings where you can't find fresh vegetables and fruit. And that's just ridiculous. Those are the things that you should be able to find. Talk about, how much it costs to buy a boxed treat versus how much it costs to buy an organic apple. And it's oftentimes more expensive to buy the stuff that's good for you. In the short term, it's more expensive. And so, I think that plays a lot into whether we are interested in performing or we're just living our everyday lives. We fall back on quote unquote convenience, but there is literally nothing more convenient than a fresh food in its own wrapper. And that's what an apple is, and that's what a banana is, and that's what most fruits are. They don't need to be Ziplocked, they don't need to be shrink wrapped or anything like that. And when it comes to other things like cooking and planning ahead what your food intake is going to be, of course that takes a little bit more preparation than, let me look in the freezer and see what I can microwave. But what's the cost of that really? And we're really good as human beings at dealing with short trauma. We see something traumatic happen, it happens to us, and we deal with that problem right away, and we have solutions for it, and we have medicine for that, and we have doctors for that, or whatever. But looking at that trauma that spans decades before we see what the outcome is really going to be, that's harder for us to deal with, especially on a day-to-day level, and to continue to make those choices that are good for us. And being able to reverse that is really, really difficult. Changing habits, as you know, is really hard. And sugar and, salt too, and all the chemicals that can be in some of these things, that changes the way we taste things. It changes the way the chemicals in our body are reacting, and the chemicals in our brain, and all of those things. And I'm not saying it's easy or anything to change the road that our food systems have led us down, but it's something that we should really endeavor to do. It's going to be better for us. It's going to be better for the planet. It's going to be better usually for like our local economy to buy locally grown fruits and vegetables. That's always better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to make sure we talk about timing, because I think that's another misconception. And again, what I have seen, my opinion on this, but what I have seen is that there's an awful lot of people that think, okay, I shouldn't eat past 5 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Right. Because somehow if I have sugar too close to bed, then that's bad.
It turns instantly to the fat around my belly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Versus just what did you have throughout the day? Mm-hmm. And things like intermittent fasting, does it work? Yes. And do I even have clients that use that type of approach? Yes. And it can work for them if that's what they choose to do. But really it comes down to how many calories are you taking in that you actually need versus how many calories that are going out that you're using. And the timing is not what matters, in my opinion, and what I've seen is, and my own results really, is that it comes down to what you are using or utilizing for better energy and better recovery, and not worrying so much about timing, but understanding that if there's a certain time of the day that you're let's say on a lull and you just feel bonked and you don't have good energy, that might be related to what you had a couple hours ago or an hour ago.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, and that really plays into endurance athletes. You know, if they're taking in, stupid amounts of sugar because they think it's going to help them when they go run this race, and then halfway through the race, they feel like poo, there's a good chance that that's equatable to how much sugar they had before they started.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's where training and racing, there's also some ideas about how when you're getting ready for a race, you'll have more refined carbs, and that's true, right? You store up some energy for that race, but on a daily basis, I'm going to work more off of slow released carbohydrates and get that energy to go out, dispersing out throughout the day. So something that's more complex energy wise, right? So oatmeal in the morning, it might work for some people. Some people, they might want to have salad in the middle of their day so they don't feel that bonk, right? But what does salad have in it? A lot of fiber, right? So what works for you there, but just those constant peaks and valleys, if you're experiencing that, I think it's really good to look at what you've been taking throughout different aspects and parts of your plan and your routine. So in other words, if you have a little bit more sugar around your training session, that certainly could be needed. And that's something that you can contribute to performance and also even recovery, right? But our schedules changes and there's that intuitiveness that I think that we need to understand. So we say, okay, I just ran this morning, and so now I'm craving something like an orange or a banana or something. You should probably have that orange or banana, right? On a different day, I didn't run this morning, and I usually have an orange or banana this time of day. Well, you might not need it at that time that day, right? So understanding that there's going to be changes and ebbs and flows, but it's more about understanding the why behind things and what you really need. And so intuitive eating, I think, is a good way to go. But in the beginning, I think you need some structure. You need to have a log. You need to figure out what's working for you, why it's working, when it works, and then build off of that until the point where you don't really need to log those things as much anymore, right?
Yeah, that's almost like a version of self-assessing. A self-assessment for your nutrition is doing that logging or journaling or whatever, and just understanding what your baseline is and saying, okay, this is where I am right now. What's my progression?
Right. Because, we've had Dr. Albertson on here talking about supplements and why most of them are crap, even though she has a supplement. All right. And those episodes that we talked to Dr. Albertson, if you haven't heard those, definitely listen in on that. But I'll put it this way. I go to somebody's house and I will see around their cupboards or in their cupboards, you see all of this crap really that they have. And then you will see a whole bunch of supplements that are somehow supposed to like equal out all the crap that they're taking in, right? If your nutrition isn't dialed in, supplements are not going to be the answer. And even if your nutrition is dialed in, I think supplements they're small percentages of a difference in your performance at best.
It's right in the name. It's supplemental.
It's supplemental, right? But I can't stress that enough. And you go to any marathon, all right, and you look at the people on the start line. Most of them are still dealing with extra weight, right? Extra fat that they don't really use or want to have, right? And it's harder on their joints, of course. So it's not all about aesthetics, by the way, but it is about heart health, of course. That's first and foremost. And it's just not healthy to be overweight. And especially though, when you look at things or you look at people who are doing all of this training and putting all of this hard work, right? If exercise could take away that bad diet, or in other words, if exercising were enough to eliminate the bad habits, then you would see a bunch of really lean people on the line, right? But
yeah, for sure.
But that's not what you see a lot of times, or really for most of the time, that's not what you see. And so my point to that is, we're looking for that magic pill too often. I think we're literally looking at those supplements as being some kind of an answer to the issues that we have when it comes to our performance or, our aesthetics or whatever. And it really goes down to those basics. And are you really dialed in with good nutritional habits that you are consuming good foods every day, that you are really focused on what is best for your optimal health, and that you're really not trying to restrict yourself. I have ice cream or I have Oreos, I have things like that. You do, but it is occasional. It's not an everyday occurrence. And when we do have those things, it doesn't affect us in a negative way. It's fine to have those things, I think, just incrementally, but the majority of the time we have really good habits. So what I think of it is if you are getting a C in school, right, or a D or an F, right, there's a problem there. And we have to study harder. We have to start to really hit the books. We have to learn more about the subject, right? And we can't just take a cheat sheet and get an A, right? Well, those supplements or those quick fixes, those things won't turn our C or D or F nutrition into an A. So we should work towards getting at least, say, a B plus, A minus, before we're looking at whether or not this supplement can make up the difference, right? Like I said, supplements are probably at best going to give a 1-2% advantage, maybe, if we're dialed in. And if we're not, it probably does nothing. And that's the supplements that are actually good, right? Which is only, unfortunately, a few supplements out there. So point is that we don't cut corners. We put in the good work. Let's honor that with better choices for our bodies, with eating whole, real, natural foods. And, that's kind of as simple as it sounds, because people might be saying, well, what exactly are you talking about when you're saying these whole, real, natural foods? I mean, you know what they are. And that's every time I talk to people about their issues, right, when it comes to their nutrition, whether it be performance or, athletics or aesthetics, right? It just, to me, it comes down to the same thing. The conversation is pretty repetitive. These answers, they know what's good for them, but really, are you prioritizing those things? And like you said, Chad, are you planning and putting that together for yourself during the week? Or are you just basically running to that quick fix through a supplement? Or are you just grabbing that box because it's convenient, or going through the drive-through because it's convenient, and then thinking, that's okay, I'm going to run later, so I'll burn it off, right? It doesn't work quite like that.
Not quite. Folks, that was our not so short and sweet episode on sugar. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you take the time to do some research into into sugar, and take the time to maybe do some logging or journaling about your own nutrition, and see if any of this conversation can help you out. If you're interested in checking us out online, you can go to Instagram or Facebook or YouTube and search for Pendola Project. You can find us on the webs at pendolaproject.com. And we do have online strength training for runners, our Relative Run Readiness video series. So go check that out. You can find that at our website, pendolaproject.com.
Yeah, man.
Woohoo!